Are we in danger of Russia being the only location for both Christianity and capitalism?
Well, now it's very interesting you say this. And today, the greatest discoverer of new questions is Putin. I think Putin is an example of the most talented strategist. What Putin has done in the time since he took over from Yeltsin is beyond belief. How enormous.
Catherine Austin Fitts and Karel van Wolferen in the house. What a treat we've got for you tonight, folks. This is two of the best analysts on the planet, in my opinion. On the left is an investment banker from the United States, Catherine Austin Fitts, worked in government and knows the corruption from deep inside the US administration. Professor Karel van Wolferen is in Denmark, or in Netherlands, I should say, and in Europe. And so we have a meeting of minds and a discussion about a week ago in something they called Reset in Ukraine, where the two sat down for about a 2-hour conversation. I've extracted the best, the most telling, and the most informative 20 minutes or thereabouts out of that 2 hours. And it's particularly informative about Vladimir Putin. What I'm going to do right now is basically shut up and let these two people do a bit of broadening and educating. All of us, including me. I'll watch along with you. Catherine Austin Fitts and Karel van Wolferen.
For political governance, you have to constantly rediscover the question, the important question. What is the problem? If people ask me, give me an example. Well, in history, Bismarck is a good example. And today, the greatest discoverer of new questions is Putin. I think Putin is an example of the most talented strategist. What Putin has done in the time since he took over from Yeltsin is beyond belief. How enormous.
So I would say it's probably Putin and Lavrov. It's like a coin.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Right.
And I have 2 years. For the first time, I see some light on the horizon because of what has happened.
So let's talk about that, because we all need to see some light.
Yeah.
And if you see light, then there's bound to be light. So I want to know more about this.
Well, the way in which Putin is moving extremely fast. The way in which the central bank, the Russian central bank, is now in a different position than it was. It was for a long time very much in the neoliberal Atlanticist thing, and it is out of it. It is he's listening to this well-known Russian Glaziev, the Russian economist, who has always been critical of Putin for not moving fast enough on that score. And he has declared that Russia has to become self-sufficient. We no longer need the rest of the world. So what has he done?
Well, he pushed very hard to do that starting in 2014.
I know, and there are a lot of booby traps, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, okay, it can fail, but what he's done, he has taken on Davos. It's the first challenge to Davos, World Economic Forum, Gates,
so this is what you see that I don't necessarily see. So tell us more about that. How is Putin taking on?
He's using the sanctions. Because of the sanctions, he's created a new geo-economic system.
Yes.
And everybody thinks this is to the disadvantage of Russia. And to some extent, of course, that is absolutely true. At the same time, he has reinstated the state.
Right.
And this is what is the World Economic Forum all about, and Schwab all about, is to do away with the state.
Right.
And, we have in a previous issue of Gezond Verstand, we have a series of articles.
Which one? This?
That I will show it to you later on. A series of articles about the history before the recent moves where you have the private sector ruling it over the public sector.
Right.
And I see this beginning, a long time ago, of course. You'd have the multilateral agreement on investments, and then that grows into, that fails because of the 9/11 thing. It's
Right.
off the thing. Then we have the ideas of the IPP and the IPP and the IPCP, etc. And of course, you have in the US the agreement with Mexico and Canada, etc. And all this is designed to give to start with agreements that will give the private sector a power over the governments, over the public
Right,
sector.
so you use international treaties to outfox constitutional government.
Precisely. And of course, the most extreme form of this is what the World Economic Forum has always wanted to do, accomplish.
Right.
And this, what they are after, the Great Reset, is precisely that. Not all of capitalism, because the small and medium size in the things, they don't participate. It's only the very big ones, and of course the financial entities. Now, this is the disappearance of the state. Europe was an easy victim because the European member states of the European Union had already transferred lots of their sovereignty to Brussels.
Right.
They couldn't really do very much anymore. Right. So and the European Union has turned out to be a monster. Really a terrible thing, with people like Frans Timmermans, who mentioned earlier, and especially Ursula von der Leyen. It is beyond belief that a person like, she failed as a Minister of Defense in Germany, but then when you fail there, and they can give you a top job in the European Union as long as you obey the instructions that we give you. So the European Union may well be the most dangerous thing for Europe ever, if this all continues. When on the 1st of July, they will sign something that will give all of us in Europe a digital idea. And that is the same thing as what was talked about for a long time, where it records the injections you've had and lots of other things, and a budget, a CO2 budget, because if you create too much CO2, you are really endangering the planet and all that nonsense, and it's also part of it. This is it's being signed on the 1st of July, and probably they're going to make it operable in the autumn. And then we have this is the newest thing. The WHO is going to be the sole authority over all the member states of the UN. All members of the UN and automatically then also the WHO must obey when the WHO says this is a pandemic. And this is what you should be doing. And pandemic is not only the biosecurity thing, which is being... No, it's also the nature, it's everything.
Right.
And this means that Bill Gates is being given... Bill Gates has become the world's greatest authority over everybody.
Right.
That is the design. Whether it works, whether it's actually going to come about is, of course, another question. But it's beyond belief.
Here's the thing. Would Russia sign that?
No, that's the whole point.
Right.
What I'm now talking about, Russia is the first challenge to all of this. Russia says it's the state. You see, we have a problem with a lot of thinkers in the West who are of a libertarian persuasion, because they think that the state is the greatest evil ever invented and many people think so. But then you have, interestingly enough, you have a website. Lee Rockwell, you're probably familiar with it. These are people who come out of that, and they are, to some extent, there are different varieties, of course, of libertarian, and they now realize how important the state is.
Right.
They've all taken it for granted.
Right.
The state is the only thing that enables citizenship. You can't be a citizen of the European Union. You can't be a citizen of the world. That's just a wonderful metaphor, but it is not real.
Right.
And you can only be a citizen of the state. So there is no democracy without a state. It's only possible in the context of a state. And this is what Putin is re-establishing the state as the most important political entity, with the responsibility of looking after its population.
Right. And so the question then is, how will China and India support that?
They are, until now, they are supportive. China, it's a very difficult thing, because China, people in Europe tend to think that this passport business, and this registering of everybody, is like the social credit system in China, and to some extent that is probably true. But I think that the Chinese system is fundamentally different. It's not about control. It's about harmony. And the Chinese, and this is something that I also know because of my experience in Japan, the ultimate aim is harmony. The ultimate aim is
Well, it's
to
harmony
avoid
and risk management.
to avoid disharmony, which is a reason for conflict. We
Right.
don't want that. And the Chinese have this. It's Confucianist. It's many things in the Chinese background, and you see that of course, it leaves you to some extent unfree. At the same,
The spirit of it is very controlling.
it's yes and no. What I hear from people who live there and who describe how it works on the ground. It's not like what people say about it.
It's nowhere
here.
near as demonic as what they're planning here.
I am not
Right, no,
advocating it.
I know, but if what the West is planning is much more demonic.
It has a different ultimate aim.
Right.
It's the unquestioned rule of an oligarchy above everything, of
Yeah, but one that's willing to
billionaires.
literally invade your mind and your body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right.
I mean, this has already, of course, happened.
Right.
And there are people who have been injected with stuff that is so awful. And we haven't actually begun talking about this. This is the greatest crime ever, I think. I think the number of victims, the number of deaths in the end are going to outnumber all the deaths in World War II. And it's happening right now under our very eyes. The people who are discovering this and who are making this debatable subject in the US particularly are the insurance companies.
Right.
With the insurance companies, all of a sudden there's a 400% increase in life insurance payments. And
Right.
and undertakers, they're saying, we can't keep up with the dead bodies.
So the one question I have is, will the government arrange, they've put in place the system they need to keep it secret. Will they arrange a secret bailout of the insurance industry? Because the insurance industry, if you look at how things are going right now, if that continues, they can't financially
Right.
handle the load.
But in the US, you have a very interesting development. In the FBI, of course, can go all over the place, and they've just started a new division, pick up anybody who spreads fake news or whatever they call it. But you have a federal government that comes with mandates, and you have states that say, "Oh, it's not our mandate."
Right.
If you hear DeSantis talk, and if you see him, young people behind him, and the first thing he says is, take off those weird masks that you are. It's
DeSantis, that's a great video. That's one of the top videos of the quarter on the Solari Report. Yeah.
So, and it is, of course, it's unbelievable. You see, the whole Biden crew, always with these masks, and also, of course, in Europe with Ursula von der Leyen with that mask, they are so silly. They look so unbelievably silly, and they look so unbelievably obedient.
Right.
They're
That's
all being
the goal.
had. Also, the ones that are participating, they're being had. They don't realize what's happened to them. They don't realize that they have subjected themselves to a bunch of criminals.
I'm assuming they're being very well paid to, it's theater.
Yes, but, okay. Is it worth, is it worth making a fool of yourself?
Well, not to you and me, but that's why we're here and they're there.
No, it's true. Okay. No, I often wonder, of course, what goes on in these heads. Perhaps very little goes on in these heads. I don't know. But now back to Putin, what he's trying to do is establishing Russia as a state. The central bank has to serve Russia. Of course, Russia is indebted to quite a few countries. All right. You calculate in rubles. We'll give you rubles.
Well, that's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out. But if you look at Russia's debt to GDP, so America's debt to GDP is 128%. Mm-hmm. Russia's debt to GDP is 18%.
Yeah.
After the rape, they never took the debt back up.
Course,
that's the brilliance of what happened, because I was over in the Yukon in 2005 when the Russians sent one of their national security advisors to study the gold market. And he went back, and that's when they started to accumulate gold. Yeah. But they never took the debt up. So they accumulated gold. They managed to do everything they've done, keeping the debt down. Mm-hmm. And they are not in a debt trap. No. That's the brilliance.
Yeah.
So it's a very unique thing to have a country not in the debt trap when they move to do this.
But this is a contest between Davos and the Kremlin. This is the first challenge to Davos.
See, your framework is different than mine. Your framework is different than mine, and your framework is much more optimistic, so I want to stick with yours.
Yeah, no, of course, and I am fully aware of the problems and of the ways that things can go wrong. But the first thing that I try to, when I think that I've understood something, I try to find arguments or things that go against it. I must understand what I may fail to see. And so that is the first thing you do. And that's what I'm doing every day now. This is what I'm doing. And I see.
Well, I've known you for 2 years, and you've been doing it every day since I've known you. So.
But anyway, so this is enormous. This changes. This really changes the geoeconomics of the thing. And
So I want to bring up something. A couple of years ago, we published a Solari report called The Rise of the Asian Consumer, where we looked at the phenomena. So you came back from Asia in approximately 1990, just as we began pouring money into the investment. We'd invested in Taiwan and Japan, but G7 really started to pour money into Asia and the South China Sea area.
I came back in the late 90s.
I thought you came back in, okay.
I came in the late 90s.
So you began to see the rise. And now what we're watching is an enormous shift, because instead of the world being controlled by the sea lanes and now the satellite lanes, we're watching the rise of the land empire and the Silk Road. And what I've been watching just as an investment advisor for the last couple of years, Wall Street has been taking public Russian companies that are going to basically, their job is building out that land empire and Silk Road. And of course, the underwriters on sort of some of my favorite Russian companies are Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs, Morgan Stanley, Goldman Sachs. Bam, the invasion starts. Who's in the market buying up Russian equities and Russian bonds? Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley. Now, what I see is this is happening when that rise of the land empire is really about to take off. It's been happening, it's been percolating, but now it's really going to take off in a big way. And before it does, there's a repositioning. But I see the Western financial interests intend to be on both sides of this thing.
Well, they probably are, yeah.
Yeah, and so if you look at a move for Russia, China, India to become much closer financially and emerge a multipolar world that builds the land empire, I see the City of London, I see the Western financial interests preparing to make big, big investments and profits on that, especially with all the money they've pulled out of the United States and the West.
Yeah, as long as they're permitted to do so.
They're permitted. I mean, they're doing.
Well, no, I look at Japan, and I see that that Japan under the American with respect to foreign policy, etc. There's no question. But what Japan does locally has always been what Japan wanted to do, and if they go along with market this and market that and financial this, and they make very sure that took over in the beginning of the 20th century and created the Soviet Union, took over from a Tsarist system that was still feudal, neo-feudal.
Right.
There was no clear separation between private and public. And of course, the communist command economies don't recognize the separation between private and public. So what had to happen when Yeltsin took over was a clear separation of private and public, but they couldn't do it. And then they had these oligarchs that started robbing the country blind again, and moving their money to the US and London and all that. What Putin now is doing, I think, is establishing clear, separate private and public sectors. And I have seen the attempts in Japan to do that. In fact, at one point, because I wrote about this, so people came to me, and one of them was the great-grandson of a minister of finance in the Meiji period, that were when Japan modernized, and he was ordered by the government, which came to power through a coup also in Japan. And he was ordered to establish a private sector. Oh. And this fellow, he invited me for dinner, etc. And he came up with stories that had been in the family. He, of course, was far away in the time scale, very, very far away. But they tried to establish a private sector. And what it meant, now, you can't have a public sector without a private sector, and vice versa.
Right.
You can only have a feudal system, and of course, in Western history, you had a gradual. It took 200 years or something with the growth of the bourgeoisie. Cities at first, and then with a lot. It's a very interesting story, and few people realize how important this is. Now here we have in the West, because of the European Union and because of the growth of the private sector power over everything, we have and the public-private partnerships and the outsourcing. All this has helped erase the line between private and public.
Right.
And what Putin is doing is establishing a private-public sector.
Right.
For the first time. Russia has never had that before.
Right.
And this is what I think is so very interesting. Well, it failed on the Yeltsin, as we know, and he had to do it. I think...
We're going to run... Are we in danger of Russia being the only location for both Christianity and capitalism?
Well, now you are... It's very interesting you say this, because although I recently read somebody comment who said, well, you don't even have to be a Christian as long as you don't believe that there are more than two genders. That is another very sore point for, it's not only Christianity, it's culture in general.
Right.
And it's clear that when the Russians look at the unbelievable deterioration of standards, of all manner of standards in Europe, in the West in general, that they want nothing of this.
Right.
But he is a Christian, a devout Christian, as far as I understand.
Right.
He was baptized in secret by his mother. His father would have lost his job if the father had known about this. He is already, from what I read a bit on Putin and what his colleagues in the various phases of Putin's career said about him, that he really believes. Right. He is a genuine, not somebody who does this as is often.
Well, I'm trying to remember. I think it was 2014 could have been later when I don't know if you remember his Christmas speech, when he kind of went off. I think it was at St. Petersburg. He went off on the immorality of the West.
Yeah.
And of course, half the audience is really uncomfortable because he's bringing up all these things we don't talk about in polite society. But you could see. I think when you function in those roles of responsibilities, you see how powerful culture is.
Absolutely.
And how it can destroy a country.
Absolutely.
Right.
And how the upending of ideas, beliefs that were fundamental to a society, like male and female, like what is marriage, what is all these things. If you upend those, you prepare a society for accepting a lot of nonsense that was being pushed down their throats in the last 2 years.
If words have no meaning, then you get the neocons.
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
So let's talk about the neocons. So, what do the neocons do now? I mean, they've had free rein to destroy Syria, Libya, country after country. Now they're being held accountable.
Yeah, if Putin succeeds in doing what he is set out to do in Ukraine, then I think it shows up that the neocons are powerless, can't do it. It will certainly place them in a very unfortunate light. And that is why it's also dangerous, because there may be a last-minute attempt to achieve something that nobody at this moment can anticipate, or will anticipate maybe but you don't know in what form it will take.
And that's a very somber and at the same time optimistic note to finish that discussion. You can get a link to the full conversation in the description to this video. But I think that was a bit informative of where Putin is coming from and the challenge, the deep challenge he represents existentially to the entire mindset and precept of the Davos set, the oligarchs, and the people behind the destruction of our economic system, which you can see all around us. All right. I'll leave it at that for today, and I'll be back with more very soon. Tomorrow we'll actually have more Catching Us and Fitz and me tomorrow, and I hope you'll join me for that. But in the meantime, for breakfornews.com, this has been Fintan Dunn reporting. And thanks for your comments in the videos, by the way. Thanks for the encouragement. Okay. See you soon, and thanks for joining me.
Have a great day.
Thank you. Same to you. Bye.